Hello, welcome to Tea with Mali. We're here today with Dr. Laura Hills. She is the president of Blue Pencil Institute. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
I'd love to know where Blue Pencil Institute came from. I love the story of how you decided to use blue pencil.
Well, actually, I had thought of blue pencil something probably 30 years ago. I started my career in writing, and back before we had computers to create text and layouts, we did it the old-fashioned way. You would type something on a typewriter, give it to a print shop, they would have a typesetter retype it, and create strips of nicely laid out text called galleys. Then these would be cut and pasted. This is where cut and paste actually comes from, but it was done with a scissor and rubber cement. And then these were laid out on a board, and the author or editor would come in and check that everything was correct before they would go to press with it. So if you found an error, the printer would give you a blue pencil. It was a particular shade of blue. And you would mark, change this, correct this, you would circle things. They'd go back in, fix the pieces that were wrong by pasting over the corrections. And here's the magic of it. When they were ready to then scan it and make a plate from which to print, all that blue would disappear. It was a trick of just the kind of equipment they were using, that only that color would disappear. And I loved that because to me it was magical. And I thought, what a great image of someone going behind the scenes, helping to improve things, and then vanishing. So the idea behind it became so popular that in the editing world, that became a verb. You would blue pencil something, which meant to edit or improve it. I kept this in my thoughts all these decades as the world changed and we have completely different technology now. But I loved that image, and I also loved that pencils in this very complex world of all these different ways we communicate electronically still work. You can still write something. It's a very high-touch communication tool. You pick it up, it's tactile. Also, blue is very, very positive. And finally, I like the clarity, especially with people who speak English as a second, third, or fourth language. They understand blue pencil. It sounds clear. I will tell you, being named Laura, it is not a clear name. People think it's Nora, they think it's Dora, they think it's Lauren. And I wanted something that when I picked up the phone and said Blue Pencil Institute, everyone would know what I said and not get it wrong. So that combination of things led me to name my company Blue Pencil Institute because I define myself first and foremost as an educator. Education is in my DNA, and I have been fascinated with teaching and learning since I started my career. And that's what I do in one form or another. So I wanted the idea that it was a learning place where people come to learn, and I wanted to be memorable and different. Finally, I wanted to name the company for something other than me. I'm at a point in my life where I can see into the distance, and I know that the number of years left to work on this are fixed, and I want to be able to leave this to someone else to carry on. And so calling it Laura Hills and Associates would possibly limit that. I wanted a name that anyone could step into. So this was a vast combination of things that went into this, but that's why I named it Blue Pencil Institute.
I find it fascinating that you chose Institute because at the core you are an educator. That's your background. That's really where you focused your doctorate degree. That's what you did. That's what you continue to do for over 30 years now. What was it like to be in school and pursuing your doctorate degree as a mother? Because I know that it took you a very long time to do it, but you did it. It took 11 years.
Yes.
How did you stay in the game? How did you just not wake up and say, I can't do this, it's too hard, I have to pick one over the other? What allowed you to keep going until you actually got it, and now I can call you doctor?
Well, that's one of the reasons. I like the sound of that very much. But seriously, the reason I went back to graduate school at the age of 42 was not a popular choice in my household at that time. And between the beginning of the journey and the end was 11 years. And my life happened over those 11 years. Think of 11 years of your life. What happens? I lost a parent. A marriage ended. I was on my own. I fell in love again. I remarried. I moved. I changed my name. I wasn't always Laura Hills. I had a different career. My style changed. I have naturally curly hair. I didn't look like this at age 42. But there were only a few constants in my life through that journey. Me, my children, and school. I think everything else, cars, things, pets, things changed. People came and went. But the most constant things were those. And school actually propelled me forward, especially through the challenging times of loss. Because when you have an enormous goal, and it was huge, for me to tackle this while I was working and raising my children and dealing with life, when you have an enormous goal, it can ground you, and that's what it did for me. Fortunately, with school, unlike many other kinds of goals, it's very clear what you need to do. The university maps it out for you. Take these courses in this order, this exam, this internship, write a dissertation, and they're like box tops you collect. And that journey of one step and one step and one step made me see that even in the difficult times, the boring times, that there was something I was working toward that was huge. So for me, it was actually the value of keeping that as a priority and not giving up. Because you're right, when you're taking a course, a graduate course, in genitive and transformational grammar, and your eyes are bleary from all of that, you wonder, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Who's going to care if I know this? But I saw the goal as the reason. And I wanted it because of many reasons. I didn't get this degree because it was going to open new doors necessarily. It was for the purpose of having that experience, of achieving that huge goal. The way that a marathon runner runs, prepares, goes through that. Do you change the world by running a marathon? Does anyone really change because you ran 26 miles? You do. And that is the same thing that I was going through. I wanted this. I wanted it just because I wanted it. And for whatever combination of reasons, I set that as the prize. And once I did, it helped propel me forward even when I felt that I was slipping backwards in other parts of my life.
So what happens when you've worked 11 years to obtain this goal that at one point or maybe multiple times during the journey seemed unattainable? You finally get there and you've accomplished it. What happens? You know, you have been building up and building up for the moment when you actually get your degree, you get it. What happens emotionally now?
I have to tell you that probably one of the greatest moments in my life was the day I graduated. I want you to picture how this felt for me. Imagine you're me. You went through all of this. Your youngest child was 6 years old when you began this journey. She's now graduating high school the month after I graduated. We graduated together. The entire George Mason University Patriot Center was filled. All of the graduate students had already marched in, all those who earned masters, and filled the floor of that arena. They saved the doctoral students for last. And I walked in my robe, carrying my hood, past every single row, and I marched to the front row and sat down, and my children could see their mother do that. And I went on that stage carrying my hood, and I was hooded in front of my children at that graduation. And the president of the university shook my hands, and I had my diploma in my hand. After 11 years, that was a huge moment for me. It meant everything. But I will tell you, in the months following that, I had a collision of two things happen at the same time. I completed that journey, and my youngest daughter went to college only 2 months later. And so I had no children at home to care for and no graduate school. And I happened to live very close to George Mason University. That September was a tough month. As I watched activity around that campus, and I saw an empty bedroom where there had been a child living, and many empty bedrooms now, it took me a couple of months to recover from that feeling of loss. Now what? I was lost. But I did. And I have since looked back at it with only happiness. Even the transformational grammar. I've let that go. Even that.
So at what point then did you decide, and what inspired you to pursue this entrepreneurial life?
Well, I had up until that point, over my career, I had done many different things. I started as a high school English teacher, and I had written resumes. I had been a lecturer. Before I had children, I used to travel around the country and lecture at big meetings. I'd written books and articles. And for the 5 years leading up until my writing my dissertation, I was a professor and an administrator at an international university. I took a leave of absence from that role to complete my dissertation, partly because my father died, and the last thing he said to me was, "Finish your dissertation." It meant everything. He was the first member of our extended family to go to college and earn his bachelor's degree, and I was the first to earn my doctoral degree. I wish he'd been there to cross the finish line with me. I took a year's leave because writing a dissertation, I found for me, was not fitting well in the corners of an already busy life. My intention was to return. But when it came time to address that, I felt that I had achieved what I had set out to achieve in those 5 years there, and that going back there was not going to help me in my own journey of growth. I'd always wanted blue pencil something, and with my youngest daughter going off to college, my husband said to me, "It's your time. This is your time. There's enough time left. You're not at the end of your career, but you have enough time to build something that means so much to you." And so it was a bold move. I gave up a nice job, a very good job. I miss my students to this day, and I'm still in touch with many of them. But this helped me learn so much I didn't know. And I'm still learning every day.
So what's it like to be an educator, someone that teaches, someone that actually shares and supports, nurtures, facilitates, guides, trains, and then have to come in and actually run a business?
It's not a natural switch. It isn't. I find that being an entrepreneur is taxing skills, sort of like that transformational grammar journey. I have to learn things that I don't naturally feel inclined toward. And I can't just pawn it off on someone else. I need to do it. I remember for instance, when I created my website, I've written books, I've written a doctoral dissertation, I've written and published hundreds of articles, but this was a beast with 1,000 arms. And it was a new challenge for me to think about a user coming into something I was writing at any place. Writing is typically a linear experience. You assume that your reader is beginning at the beginning of an article and reading through it. You don't know this on a website. For me, that was mind-blowing, that anyone could come in at any point and had a completely different experience than another user. And you had to account for that, and the graphics, and learning about video, and learning about bookkeeping, and every little thing. I've written and published books with publishers, but never had I designed one with anyone. Never had I had say about how it was printed, let alone how it's distributed. I had to learn about how to buy boxes for shipping books. What did I know of that? I still am learning every day. I had to learn about social media, as we all have. And I'm still a work in progress. But don't you think this is what's keeping me fresh and fun, instead of returning to teach English again, which I loved doing. I taught ESL and academic English. I am qualified both ways. This is a completely new ball of wax. And so for me, it has pushed me way out of my comfort zone. And we need that, or we stagnate.
So when you are getting up in the morning now and you look forward to your day, your week, your month, and also this is a legacy for you. Like you said earlier, this is something greater than you. When you think of Blue Pencil Institute and the programs and the offerings, what do you hope your clients and constituents and people who truly are coming to benefit from what you have to offer, what's your biggest hope for them as they come through your programs and work with you?
My hope is that they come out of it more enthusiastic about what they do every day. This is what I have observed. I work with people who are not fresh out of school. Typically, I work with people who have achieved some level of success. And they're at a life point where it doesn't feel satisfying. That's my typical person I work with. Helping them either figure out what is going to be satisfying or learn the skills they lack so that they can achieve what they set as a goal, and then watching them do it, to me, is very gratifying. It's the teacher in me. And so they come, and I hope that they end up feeling more rewarded and more fulfilled, but especially that they have the enthusiasm I feel for Blue Pencil and the enthusiasm I know that you feel for your work and working with your clients. That's what I want for every person who goes to a Blue Pencil Institute program, or reads one of our books, or is coached. Any of those ways, that they come out feeling that they're going to be basically happier.
You came out and you finished your doctorate degree in 2010. You decided you were going to launch this institute, and you did so. You just shared that you had to learn a lot. What are you proud of now that you can say, I'm actually pretty good at it?
My branding.
Okay.
I had the benefit of working with Akia Garnett early on to help me craft my mission and vision statements. Yes. And I worked with very talented people to help me refine the brand graphically. And I'm very, very pleased when I see all of my materials and I look at my website, and even me in it, it all hangs together well. To me, this is a journey I've totally loved. I've enjoyed that, and for me, I think it's a strength. I think when you see or experience Blue Pencil Institute and Dr. Laura Hills, there's a consistency.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about your specific program. If someone comes to you and they basically say, I want to learn more about this institute. What is it going to do for me? What are you going to do for me? What would your answer be?
It depends who this person is. If they are an individual, probably they would benefit by reading our books. I hope to increase the product line as we move forward, but also being coached one-on-one. If you are a person who runs a company, you might want to bring in Dr. Laura Hills or another individual to offer training. If you are a person who's organizing a large conference, you might think one of our programs would be a good fit.
What's your inspiration for all the different topics that you focus on when you speak, and especially with your books? You have authored now how many books officially?
6.
6, right?
Yes.
And you brought a couple with you that we're going to talk about. When you think about your topics, the areas in which you want to focus, is it typically from your experience with working with clients and then having them be the inspiration of, oh, I should write about it? Or is it something that comes within your personal experience and you put it out there and then it attracts your clients? What do you think is happening?
I think it comes from the vast experience I have in education and working in the lecture circuit and working out in front of people. I have a particular expertise in a few areas. One of them is the second language learner. I not only taught ESL, I directed the ESL program. But I also have an expertise in working with entrepreneurs, but particular ones. For these 30 plus years, I have written for and spoken to people who have private practices. So physicians, dentists, optometrists, largely healthcare, though I have worked in law and even accounting practices. And I did some consulting work very early in my career, and I learned of the myriad problems that a person might have in hiring people, in setting up systems, in dealing with difficult patients. And so I became very well versed in that field. And I do know that a lot of it comes down to communication and relationship building, those two things. And so for me, I know where the stumbling blocks are. I understand from having met so many people and worked with so many people and gotten input. So for me, that's hugely where it comes from.
From your experience with communication, what could be some of the typical breakdowns? You've had years and years of seeing this. Can you give us some examples of incidences where people just aren't getting along? Is it language? Is it cultural? Is it generational?
Yes.
And how do you go about bringing awareness to it? Because I think most of us sometimes just, are doing our thing. We walk around and we don't really understand what's happening back here in our subconscious, how we judge, how we perceive people, what decisions we already make before they even open their mouths. So,
well, let's begin at the beginning, if that's all right. I think it's a miracle that we communicate half as well as we do. If you think about what happens, we're having a conversation. You have no idea what my morning was like, and I have no idea what yours was like. Maybe I had a headache. I didn't, but maybe I did. Maybe I'm worried about something. Maybe my way of speaking is different from yours. I'm a New Yorker, so you'll see a lot of gestures and facial expressions, and I'm fast at times, and I talk long. Maybe there is a cultural issue at play or an age issue at play. I'm older than you. So we have all of this, not to mention there might be noise in the background, lights that are distracting us. And of course today we're speaking on camera, which is something we're trying to pretend is not happening, but it is. So,
that's right.
So we have this fourth wall over here that we're ignoring, but all of this, in any communication, is going on. It's a miracle we can communicate. We call this noise, sometimes literal, sometimes internal, bias, preference, all of this. I think what happens for people is that they yield to the noise, but I think also the biggest problem, the single biggest problem, is that when people communicate, they don't know what they're trying to accomplish. Their goal, they think, is one thing, but it's actually another.
I want to go deeper into that particular topic because I recently went to an event, Pause for Power by Richa Badami, and you were talking specifically that day about goals.
Yes.
And I really wanted you to share your insights around it because I thought it was quite powerful. We have our frontal goals, the ones that we tell everybody is the goal, and then we have all this other stuff. So can you elaborate on goal setting and being honest and truthful about goals and how that can be a positive, good thing for everyone involved?
Yes, thank you. That's my favorite thing to talk about, in fact. So we're talking now. Let's use us as an example. What's our goal today? Why are we having this conversation?
For me, it's to inspire people to continue to do some good for the community, give you a platform, allow me to be that facilitator, and help you soar while helping others soar. All of that's happening.
Okay, all of that's happening. Do you want to look good while you're here?
Uh-huh.
Do you want to sound intelligent?
Yes.
Okay, do you want to make me feel comfortable?
Absolutely.
Okay, I have my own goals. I like doing this, first of all. I want to support you. But I'm trying to promote a business, and as you are. So this is definitely in there. I'm trying to strengthen our relationship because we've met on several occasions, and this is bringing our relationship farther along. Maybe I have an ego, and I just get off on this a little bit, being asked all these questions and being the center of your focus for an hour and the viewer's focus. There is so much going on. The problem occurs when we think we have the most important goal is the surface one, but the underlying one is actually the place we need to focus. This is where the problems occur. A person is arguing with the boss. And what is the surface goal? Proving the boss is wrong, outshining the boss, fighting back against the boss. But what's the overarching goal? Keeping the job should be for most people, right? They lose their temper, they want to be right, they want to save face. You have all this going on all the time with our communication. If we focus our effort on the surface goal, the one that feels good, Pam, we want to just strike out at someone, we lose the bigger picture. With a child, I have daughters. There are days when you're raising children, you just want to tear your hair out. You want to scream and throw things and bang things, and some people even want to pop them one. And I understand it. Why don't you do that? Because your overarching goal is to raise a whole person who has self-esteem, who has self-respect. You don't go there and belittle a child because the mature person says, no, the bigger goal is more important than punishing and showing your authority.
But Dr. Hills, what is the trick, though, to getting to a place where you listen, which is a major form of communication, listen to yourself? Because all this you're sharing is quite fascinating. And we know that there are underlying goals that are happening, the little voice in our head that talks. But when we're in reaction mode,
that's it.
How do you practice the pause? Because it can literally be whatever next decision you're going to make can change the rest of your life, can change this relationship you have with your child, can change it. There's that moment, can be the moment that it ends something, begins something, what have you. How have you learned to, wait a minute, what else is going on here?
When you make mistakes, learning from them is very powerful. Believe me, everybody makes mistakes, and I'm no exception. And so that's one very, very important thing, is to re-examine what's already happened and learn from it. Step out of the moment and give yourself a time out if it's an anger issue. But that's not the only kind. Anger is only one of the ways that we respond in the way that mucks it up, gets in the way of what we're trying to do. It might be fear. It might be somebody's too timid. Being shy is more important than achieving the most important goal. And so not standing out, not taking a risk often leads to problems. Not speaking up for oneself can lead to problems. So helping yourself, or if you're helping another person with this, as we do, helping them really see what they're doing. What happened in that conversation is very, very powerful. Learning from mistakes, looking back, and learning some technique there to just say, I'm starting to react emotionally. And the place to start to know you're doing that is the body. The body never lies. When you start feeling your stomach is in knots and your blood is boiling and your throat is starting to constrict, that's a clue. You can hear it pumping in your ears, listening to the body, and we don't listen. Most of us just go with it, but we need to stop and start to know ourselves. The communication begins there.
The communication piece is something you are always focusing on, and that's actually the topic, the focus of your most recent book.
Yes.
So I wanted to bring this up. I love the title. Can you share what the title is for those that are watching?
I'd love to. It's called They'll Eat Out of Your Hand If You Know What to Feed Them.
So tell me more. What is this all about, and what's the motivation behind this fascinating title?
I'll tell you, this is the book I'm probably most proud of the 6, because it encapsulates my feelings, my theories, my philosophies, and my teachings about communication that I've developed over these decades. So what I have done, I know from experience that if you're trying to teach someone some skills and you give them 17 things to worry about at the same time, it's never going to work. So I always am trying to distill ideas into manageable chunks that we can work on. So what I've done in this book is I've identified 6 communication areas that every career professional today would need to excel in order to be successful. These, yes, so reading, writing, speaking, listening, body language, and visual and digital communication. Then within each of those, I distilled further and gave only 5 skills. So this is a total of 30 individual skills, but in these 6 areas. And in doing this book, I was able to take my own lessons about speaking comprehensively after trying them years and years with people, helping them improve speech, helping them become better listeners. The parts that I had to learn the most about were body language and visual and digital communication. I had to do a lot of research in order to craft those chapters. But being able to take these lessons I've developed and distill them, make them manageable, and present them in a small format such as this book, which is a pretty quick read and an easy skim, to me was a trick that took a lot of work. It looks easy, but it was really the culmination of decades of work with people.
Right. I don't think writing a book is ever easy.
No.
You know, I really think that you having 6 in itself is a pretty great achievement. So I commend you for that. And when you're talking about writing a book and speaking and all the forms of communication, why do you speak? Did that get inspired in you when you were younger? Where did you see someone evoke that in you? I'm just curious, because everything happens for a reason, and we're drawn to something for a reason. I wonder where your desire to educate and to learn comes from.
You would think it was through some great role model or some big moment. What it really came from was seeing things not work out. Sometimes a negative role model can motivate you to take great action. I was always the best writer in my class, probably like you. I was always the kid who could get up and give a book report in school and nail it. And I saw kids struggle all through school, even in college. I was always the person people would come to with a problem with a paper. And we have so much education that's geared toward teaching us to write and to speak, mainly write, right? So what's wrong? Why are people struggling? Why are they intimidated? Why are they still having problems with it? And I feel that what I try to do, and that's maybe different, is that I work to help people feel better as they're doing it. When you believe your whole life you stink at something, and then every teacher marks your paper all over with horrible comments and circling and bad grades, how are you supposed to improve under that kind of circumstance? So maybe that is what motivated me to step forward and say, I'm going to teach people to learn these things, but make them feel good, like they can do it, because they can. This is something everyone can improve. It's learnable, it's teachable. And it isn't done by drill and making people feel like they failed. I've taught too much of that through all of my schooling. And that was my experience in another subject, math. That I had the opposite. I did not come naturally to math, and I ended up feeling that I was just not good at math, and it never came to me. Because the way things are usually taught, that can happen. I didn't want that to continue. I have found there is not a person I've ever tried to work with who hasn't improved. It's doable. And often not as hard as people think.
When you talked to me earlier about helping others, educating others that speak a different language and English as a second language, and pre-show you talked about how important diversity is for you and the inclusion that every human being gets a chance. That's exactly what I just heard in you now. Underneath all of it is you believe in people and you believe in giving people a chance. That's everything, and anyone can do it if someone believes in them, if the system is right, etc. Do you come across people who really have given up on themselves? Have said, it's
yes.
too hard, I can't. And how do you stand in front of them and let them take that in and shift their mindset?
Usually by demonstrating that they can change. I'll give you a great example. One of the hardest things for people learning English to do well is speak comprehensibly. If their sound system in their native language doesn't match up with English, they say, people don't understand me. You can learn vocabulary by memorizing it, and you can learn grammar by using logic, but the sound system, the phonology, is the hardest nut to crack, and people have given up. I've spoken this way for 20 years, they'll say, and no one will ever help me get better. And so I used my method of simplifying it and helping them I have 3 keys to clear speech. Okay. And I focus on one. I do an assessment and say, this is the one this is where the money is.
Well, what are the 3?
I got your interest.
There.
Okay.
Yes. What are the 3?
And this is for native speakers of English as well. We speak many different ways depending upon who we're speaking with and the context. I don't sound like this at home. I don't say to my husband, Cornell, it's time for dinner. I'll say, hey, Cornell, it's time for dinner. I speak quickly, I slur, I'm sloppy. We're sloppy at home. This is my formal Dr. Laura Hill's speech, especially as a New Yorker. I have to be mindful not to ask for coffee. So the first is, this first key of clear speech, formal speech. You release the consonants at the ends of words, especially consonant clusters, because in our sloppy way, we simplify things. I'm going, instead of NG, is a consonant cluster. So I'm going rather than I'm going. You don't even hear the G usually. So I'll show people that if they can just simply do that, we'll do some exercises, their comprehensibility goes through the roof. Number 1, release final consonants. Number 2, delineate your vowels. Depending on the native speaker's first language, there may be vowel confusion or even sometimes consonants. So WV is a consonant confusion for people who speak Turkish. They'll say West Virginia, right? Because they may say something like that. If you speak Arabic, you're going to have a PB problem because there's no everything sounds like a B. So we'll figure out what is the vowel or the consonant where you're getting hung up. I'll tell you, for New York, we have problems with our aw. Coffee is that's, so starting with where they're from. Okay, so the second is cleaning up the most important muddiness in either a vowel or sometimes a consonant. Usually it's vowels. Man, men. Pin, pen, pan. How do we get those clear? And the third, I call it chunking and spacing. Instead of right, which is how we speak at home, putting in intentional pauses by chunking according to meaning. We could say, I'm going to the store and then I'm going to go home. Or we can say, I'm going to go to the store and then I'm going to go home. You heard there. Now, you can't say, I'm going to the store. There has to be semantic meaning to why you put the pause. When you speak before others, especially in a presentation, that's hugely important because you don't know who's listening. And you have to speak so that no matter their listening ability, their hearing, or their native language, you give them time to catch up. So you put those pauses, and of course if you gesture, that helps. So release final consonants, clean up the vowel or the consonant that's hanging you up, and chunk in space. So usually I will listen to a speaker and begin by saying, the place you need to work is the final consonant. Or it's this WV or the P and the B.
We take for granted because we speak English, and I came here when I was pretty much a baby, and so I learned English very early on. And we take it for granted because it's natural to us. I have a lot of friends. We're in the Washington, D.C. market, so we have tons of international folks that are, in transit. They come for a little while, they go. Some of them came here when they were a little older. There are all kinds of accents, all kinds of nuances. And a lot of my friends who have those thick accents are so self-conscious because they feel like they're concerned that they're not going to be taken seriously, that they will be considered not as intelligent as their peers because they have this accent. How do you work with someone who has those fears or concerns? Is it just about helping them on the practice piece, right, articulating? Or how do you get down to the psychological level of letting go of that fear and just allowing themselves to be and improve along the way?
Well, the first thing is you have to help them understand the miracle of speaking more than one language. Here's a little joke for you. My students used to like this. What do you call a person who speaks 3 languages?
What?
Trilingual. What do you call a person who speaks 2 languages?
Bilingual.
What do you call a person who speaks 1 language? An American. First, helping them realize that what they are doing is nothing short of a miracle. I'm not fluent in another language. My expertise is language acquisition. So to me, this is a miracle. They speak English much better than I speak any other language. And they're brilliant native speakers of their own language. So the shortcoming that they may feel they have is actually one that most of our American population who was native speaker of English would not have. So that to begin with, they need to be congratulated. What they're trying to do is very hard. English is hard. It's devilishly difficult. And they have succeeded to be able to understand and function in this world. Kudos to them. So helping build up their self-esteem that way. And seeing that their native language and its sound system and its syntax, its vocabulary, its lexicon is just as wonderful as English. There's no inferior language, though we have biases towards certain accents and others we hold in high regard. We love a lovely English, French accent. We love a lovely Spanish accent, someone from Spain, but there are certain accents that we don't enjoy here. because the sound system is so very different. So many other languages are formed in the nasal cavity more and have a different tone to them. They're tonal languages. So helping them see that you're not inferior because your native language happened to be whatever it was, and that you are a miracle by even attempting this and then succeeding as you've done is incredible. Start there. I always would build my students up. And I would always tell them, I would sit in the classroom and look at them the first day and I would say, welcome to the United States. And if I didn't know from your student record, I would think every one of you is an American, regardless of how you dress, your appearance, or the way you speak English. You all look like Americans in this country. There's no passing for American. You passed. So helping them see that they don't need to feel embarrassed. In fact, they should be very proud that they've been able to do this. Helping to build up the person first, and then giving them a success. That's very important. Giving them a success right away, where we work on one skill and they get the hang of it and they go practice it in the world. And by golly, they start sounding clearer. Sometimes the problem is they learned English, but it was British English rather than North American English. So they'll go in a restaurant and they'll ask for water and they'll get butter, or something, because we don't say water. We don't do that with our T. We do it like a D, water, right? So we have trouble understanding people from England, but if you were learning English from a different sound system through the British system, you've added an extra hurdle here in the United States. Right. Helping them understand that. They say, this is why I'm having trouble here. We don't say butter, mitten, we don't say that. So that adds to the whole confusion when people listen to them. Correcting that one thing, it makes a huge difference.
You are a true educator, let me tell you that. I'd like to take a moment to talk about community. You do community work well, and you love it, and you always want to give back. Let's talk a little bit about your side projects. Where are you when you're not running the Blue Pencil Institute? Although you're always running it, right? I mean, you're always out there representing it in some form or fashion. But outside of that, what are you drawn to in terms of community support and work?
I believe in a balanced life. It's one of the skills I help people work on, is work and life balance. So for me, part of a balanced life is one that includes service to others as a component. So for myself, I bookend every week with service. Every Monday, I attend my Rotary Club meeting. I am a very active Rotarian. I was the president, in fact, of the Rotary Club of Fairfax in 2012 and 13. And we are involved as a Rotarian in projects locally in our community, but also globally. Very exciting projects. And I have been a member of the club for nearly 8 years, and it has been a fabulous way to give back, meet amazing people, and have fun.
Right, that's where we officially.
That's right. We met at Rotary. Then on Fridays, for the past 13 years, I have another hat I put on. I'm Laura the Music Lady. It has nothing to do with Dr. Laura Hills or Blue Pencil Institute, but I am an accomplished pianist, and I rotate between a couple of facilities in my community, a skilled nursing and an assisted living, where I do a couple of programs each week in each facility. I do one for the Alzheimer dementia residents, one for the general population, and I simply just entertain. But I do music appreciation, play the piano, and we sing. And for the more cognitively able residents, I actually teach them about the music and its context. I focus on Broadway show tunes, classic Broadway, and jazz standards of the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. So I weave in stories about the composers and the lyricists, the performers, the dramatic context We'll look at things like rhyme schemes. The English teacher in me comes out. We'll look at chord patterns, and we'll talk about how these ideas spark memories and have interesting conversation. So for me, these two things are completely different. And I think when you look at how I've run my life, what I do, you'll see that I enjoy the variety. I don't think I would be happy if I was just a writer, or just a speaker, or just a coach, or just the music lady. I like my life in this crazy patchwork mosaic kind of way of these different parts of me that get exercise. And the funny thing is, when I'm with my residents and talk to them about music, they have no idea about any of Blue Pencil. They don't care about that. They know me as Laura, the lady who comes and brings them the music.
Yeah, I can resonate with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mosaic, the being able to do and be so many different things to so many different people. I think it's fascinating when you have that kind of energy and you have that, that spirit, the creative spirit. It's very hard to just pick one thing.
It is.
I mean, and that's not to say that it's not necessarily good for us sometimes, but I think the ability for us also to be chameleons also makes our work and our job poignant because of the different personalities we have to meet and where we have to meet them. So anyway, I just resonate with that because as you were talking, I'm thinking that's probably why I enjoy so many different projects. A lot of people tell me all the time, how do you do all of that? And for me, it's like I don't feel like I'm doing a lot. It's just all parts of me coming through.
Could you see yourself just doing a single focus on it's, do you do, I'm sure you have to at times, but could you see a life where you basically did one type of thing over and over again all day? No. And I think this is just who we are. Not everyone feels that way. Some people love the thing so much they can't not do it, that one thing. And really, when you look at the genius behind certain accomplishments that people have had, maybe their laser focus on that one thing is what helps them be who they are. But for me, I see myself as an artistic temperament. And for me, this is a giant palette of life. And I'm very fortunate that I can do this. That helps a great deal, to have the support of my husband, to have succeeded in raising my children, and to be at a life point where I can choose. Certainly when I was younger, I didn't always have that choice. I did many things during the years I raised my children to make it work. I took on projects I didn't particularly enjoy. In fact, I disliked some. There was one year of my life I wrote a newsletter called Doctor's Tax Report.
Doesn't sound like you at all.
No, but it worked with children's preschool hours and baby naps, and I was able to make the money I needed to make, and it worked for my family. I had a very interesting way of raising my children. I worked, but I was also a full-time mother. I was doing something that I don't think there was a name for then, but I was a mompreneur for many years. There was no support for it. Now there's a whole world of women encouraging this in one another and supporting it, and you can go online and find resources. But when I did it, I felt very isolated. I was the mom who took the kids to preschool, and while the other mothers went and had coffee, I went home and wrote Doctor's Tax Report. Or I'd be up in the middle of the night meeting a deadline because a child had had an ear infection. And I used to envy people who commuted. I thought how nice to have time to yourself. I didn't have that. And I feel that this is my reward, this time, right now, for having gone through all of it. I am at a beautiful life point where I'm getting to do exactly what I want to do.
That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And can you now tell our viewers how to find you?
Yes.
How to get information about the Institute, about you personally, and if they have any questions or even an interest to work with you?
Well, the best way would be to visit my website. It has everything you can imagine. My bio, videos, it has a program catalog, descriptions of our books and ways to order them, articles for free, my blog. It's your one-stop shop. So it's very easy to remember the name. It's www.bluepencilinstitute.com.
Thank you so much for being with me today.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
It went by pretty quickly,
It
didn't
did,
it?
and the tea was as delicious as promised.
Thank you again. And as you write more books, as you work on more projects, we'll have you come back.
I would
okay?
love it. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Molly.
Dr. Hills. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on another episode of Tea with Molly, and we will see you next time.
Get caught buzz driving, and you could do some hard time.
Craig, knock it off.
Sorry, Mom.
It could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. And that could set you back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
El mensaje de texto típico te distrae del camino por casi 5 segundos. Evita textear, evita chocar. Aprende más en evitatextearevitachocar.org.
There's a shelter pet who wants to meet you. Meet one today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org. Adopt.